Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. And for today's eye look, I really leaned into green because the palette of discussion today is the Colourpop The Child palette. And this is based off of Baby Yoda, although we don't, do we know? No, I don't think we know that it's actually Yoda. This Mandalorian, the Star Wars fandom is not my nerd culture of choice. If this palette were called like Hidden Leaf Village or Rock Lee palette or something, I would be in trouble to buy this palette. But luckily, as I said, this is not like the nerd culture I'm very involved in, so I don't have like a very strong like polar desire towards the packaging or the theme. But anyways, today's palette is the Child palette. It's based off of the very memeable Baby Yoda sipping on his coffee, tea, soup, whatever it is. I do remember I've watched a little bit of The Mandalorian. There was this one scene where Baby Yoda, was in front of these kids on this planet and he eats a frog and all the kids are like, ew. And it reminded me of like bringing Asian food to school and all the people who are not, like accustomed to it being like, ew. That was a tangent. Let's move on to the palette. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is duping it. I do this for a bunch of new releases. I will have the full playlist linked here, and a lot of it is Colourpop because they just come out with a lot of stuff. To start off, right off the bat, I'm going to show y'all the final swatches of the shades that I found within my own collection that I tried to model after the Colourpop's The Child palette. At first I thought I would have a lot of trouble making this palette because it's not just another neutral palette, it really leans into greens, and I don't have a ton of greens within my palette collection of around like 25 palettes or so. However, I would say I got pretty close. Let me compare these swatches to Trend Mood swatches of the actual palette. And as I say, I always trust Trend Mood swatches over swatches from the official brand because you never know what kind of color editing or post photo work they did on that final image they're sharing to their social media. So here it is next to Trend Mood. I will admit that I did not get this palette exactly, but I am happy with what I ended up with. I have assembled my 9-pan as much as I could, so I have 7 of the 9 shadows here. And the other 2 are within my Lime Crime Venus XL2 palette. If I just really wanted more greens, I think that this, especially if I were into the theme of this palette would be difficult for me to turn down. Thankfully, I don't often wear greens, which is the reason why I don't have so many in my collection, which is another reason why I probably wouldn't need to bring extra into my collection because I already don't have enough interest in them to have them in the first place. That was a very roundabout way of saying like, I don't have them because I don't want them. I don't do looks like this, like ever actually. This is probably the first time I've done an all green look. Now let me get into these shades, but quickly before we get into it, if you like this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up, especially because these videos of mine tend to get more thumbs downs than the rest of my content, so it would, oh my god, it would make me quite happy to see a lot of thumbs up on this video. And if this is your first time seeing me or meeting me, hello, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. And if you don't have your notification bell on, turn it on if you want to, if you can stand to. Now let's get into it. Here is my little 9-pan and then 2 extra shades from my Lime Crime Venus XL2 palette. And I also have these palettes pulled out because this is where I pulled these shades from. So let's go shade by shade. This first shade, the top left one, is mimicking the first shade in the Child palette called Precious Cargo. So this shade I've pulled from my Sailor Moon Pretty Guardian palette, and it is this shade called Silver Millennium. It is a Super Shock formula, and it's just like a very it's like a white with a very prominent gold shift, which is what it looked like to be in the swatches to me. So let's do a swatch of this baby. There it is on my finger. I might need to build up this swatch a little bit because of just the formula it is. It's more of a sheer formula. Can you see it even? So let me build it up one more time. Oh yeah, you can see that a little bit better. So there is that first shade, Silver Millennium. The second shade is a shade that's not in my actual homemade 9-pan, but it is called Right Hand Mando, which looks like a very silvery, cool tone green. And for that, I picked from my Venus XL palette this shade called Myth. In Trend Mid swatch, this actually looked to be almost a frank white color, but I know I've seen some other pictures as well that show it with more green, so this might be one that deviates a bit from the swatches. There it is. The thing about the Lime Crime formula is it's just like so hard pressed and it's a little bit hard to pick up, but here is that second shade for Right Hand Mando, and it is the Venus Lime Crime XL 2 palette Myth. So you can see this is like a very light green with some silver sparkles in it. Let me bring you all a little bit closer. Yeah, there we are. So you can see the swatches a bit better. This third shade is akin to just like Tatooine, which was one of the settings in the Mandalorian, I believe. Don't come for me if I'm wrong about any of this. So this is from my Colourpop Going Coconuts palette, and it is this shade Lovely Bunch, which is just a great like neutral, very neutral, not too cool transition shade, and it even has a little bit of a pink flush in it, which I also saw in the swatches. So here's a swatch of that third shade. It's just a matte, neutral transition tone with a little bit of, oops. My battery just cut out. I hope that not a lot of the footage was lost, but here's that third tone, which is that transition shade. Let me zoom y'all in a little bit. Okay, there you go. So there's that third transition shade. I'm gonna actually just extend it a little bit. All right, the fourth shade is in the original palette called Sipping Soup. It is a light metallic green, and my pick is from my Alamar Cosmetics Reina del Caribe palette that I depotted into this Makeup Forever little magnetic palette, and it is this green shade called El Malecon. It is by far the most stunning green I have ever touched in my life. It's super foiled and metallic, and as you can see in the swatch, it is exactly that. Wow, this is like the best. This is just the green to end all greens for me. The whole reason why I don't buy more greens is because I already have this one. So there's that fourth shade. The fifth shade, which would be in the middle here, is in the original palette called Baby Face, and it is just this kind of frosty sage looking green, which is why I'm gonna pick this shade from the Lime Crime palette called Sage, actually. And again, the formula of this Lime Crime palette, especially for the greens, is just very lackluster. See, it's just like, you know, not the best formula for a green. So if I really was seeking after a shade like this that worked well, I may consider picking up the Colourpop one or a Colourpop one, just because I trust their formula a little bit more. But if you work with it, you can get a really beautiful looking color and swatch. It just takes a little bit more work and blending. Shade number 6 is called The Force. Ooh, and it's this bronze with some green in it, and that's exactly what this shadow is. It's from the Alter Ego Artemis palette, and the placement here means nothing because I rearranged this entire palette, but it is the shade that is called Scent. This is the original place where that shade was, and it's essentially like a yellow bronze with green reflex to it. So a swatch of that one. The formula of the shimmers in these Alter Ego palettes, it's just outstanding. I love the shimmers in here, and so here's a swatch of that bronze with green. So there it is with just the first little swatch, and then let me build it up a little bit. Of the metallics, the Scent one, because maybe it's because it's a little sparkly, it is a little bit drier than some of the other Alter Ego shimmers that I've tried. So there is the Scent from the Alter Ego Artemis palette. Shade number 7 is this lawn green color in the original palette. It's called Little Frog. Oh, I think that's named after that eating the frog story that I told earlier in this video. But this color is also from my Artemis palette, and it is this green originally in the place of Silent, which is right here. And I picked this green even though it looks more vibrant than the green in the Colourpop palette. The mattes in this Alter Ego Artemis palette in particular, like compared to the other Alter Ego palettes, the colored mattes are a cream to powder formula, so they actually don't show up as bright as they appear to in the pan. That's just because of the nature of the formula. It requires a little bit more building and blending. This, I feel like I'm gonna have to swatch a lot to get that like vibrant green to come through, because even like using it on my eyes today, it took a lot of building. So here is Alter Ego's Silent, this grassy green. And it looks very light when you first swatch it. I'll just go ahead and build it up one more time and leave it at that, not really work too hard for this one. Ooh, see, now that green is coming through a lot better. This is a match that's not exact. It's one of those that I conceded is not like a perfect dupe or anything. But if I'm just looking for a lighter grassy green, then this is what I'm gonna reach for. This 8th shade in the original palette is called Float Your Crib, and it's this army green looking color. The shade I picked is from my So Jaded palette, and it is the shade called Jade. Again, I rearranged this, but the placement of Jade is right here. And this isn't like the most army green. I actually have a Colourpop single called Team Captain, which is more of an army green, but honestly, when I use Team Captain, it swatches terribly. It's very difficult to use. So when I was swatching Jade and Team Captain side by side, Jade just performed so much better. So that's the reason why I'm including it in the palette. It's just a better green in my opinion. So here's a swatch of Colourpop So Jaded Jade. And let me build it up one more time. See, that's a pretty good formula for a matte green, especially like a darker matte green. There's Jade. And we have just one color left, y'all. It's the 9th shade in the original palette. It's called Droid Protocol. And this is like a dark brown, a dark matte brown. I was considering between this brown and the Going Coconut's nutty shade down here, but swatching these side by side. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you where this one is from. This one is also from my Alamar Cosmetics Reina del Caribe palette in this spot. But swatching the Going Coconut shade and the Alamar Cosmetics shade side by side, this one just works so much better. So I included it in this palette of mine. The Alamar Cosmetics formula is so much smoother and richer, whereas swatching the dark brown in the Going Coconuts palette was very, a lot like patchier. Don't get me wrong, the nutty shade in Going Coconuts is still a great brown, but this one is just better. Not all dark browns are made equal. Oh my gosh, I just swatched that off out of the frame, but here is the final swatch of that dark brown from the Reina del Caribe palette. And those are all 9 shades. There we have it, right on my arm. Here they are. Let me know how you think I did. Thank you so much for watching this video. In the overhead footage, I didn't show y'all a lot of alternatives. Like for this shade, I was thinking shade 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then picking out of those like I did for the Natasha Denona Mini Zendo palette, but that's also because, as I said before, I don't have a lot of options for greens in my collection, so I think what I picked is like essentially what I have, so that's the reason for that. Thank y'all so much for watching. I hope you had a great time with me today. Thank you for the time you spend with me. I really treasure your time. Remember that y'all are my treasure. Find the beauty in every day, but most importantly, be kind to yourself. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!